Tonight's episode of the 31st Lap Podcast is brought to you by DirtTrackDigest.com. If it's on dirt, it's on Dirt Track Digest.
This is the 31st Lap Podcast, recorded live in the studios of FingerLakes1.com in downtown Seneca Falls, New York. And now, your host, Chris Marquardt.
Good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to this edition of the 31st Lap Podcast, episode number 255. On deck for you tonight, we got Camden Proud joining us to talk a little bit about all sorts of different topics. His own racing season, action over there at Oswego Speedway, and also some of the opportunities that he's got coming up in 2019 in terms of working with ISMA. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Again, we are live here from the North Park building at Academy Square, so glad that you guys could tune in and join us for this evening's program. Camden is waiting on the line. Cam, man, how are you?
Good, how are you? I appreciate you having me.
For sure. I was getting a little bit nervous. We got a little bit late in the day, but we were able to connect, and I'm glad we did. Mike Mallett came through, got me your phone number so that we could have tonight's show. Thanks for coming on.
Awesome. Yeah, again, I appreciate you having me, and thanks, Mike, for the hookup.
So you got a busy summer in front of you between racing yourself. You're going to be handling all of the PR duties over at Oswego Speedway, and then handling social media duties and some of the other PR content this season with ISMA. I mean, how busy is this year going to be?
I would say the busiest racing season of my life so far, between moving up to the super modified class at Oswego this year and continuing with the PR duties there, and also picking up on the ISMA end of things and doing some more traveling. So it's overwhelming, but it's also an amazing opportunity for me to get to continue racing and also do these two jobs, which is honestly something I've always wanted to give a try. So it's been a great experience so far.
Sure. Tell me a little bit about how all of this came about. I mean, it's an opportunity that I know you've been chasing quite a bit in terms of getting into the media side of things, and then all of a sudden the floodgates open and you're going to be working both Oswego Speedway and ISMA this year. How did it all start to align?
Yeah, it's been crazy, really, how it's all kind of developed. 4 or 5 years ago, when I was starting to race in the small block class at Oswego, I just kind of, taught myself to do some PR. We had a sponsor contract with one of my primary sponsors, still with us today, and they just wanted some PR stuff, and I messed around with that a little, and then actually I met Mike Mallett through the high school. He was my teacher, and he gave me the opportunity to write for Dirt Track Digest, write for Pave Track Digest, and then I still do my CNY Motorsports site today, and I think that's kind of what's caused Oswego and ISMA and some of these other places to look into having me do the PR. So it's just kind of amazing how it's come full circle for me. It's more than I ever expected being involved in the sport, that's for sure.
It's more than you expected, but at the same time, it's something that you wanted to do. How did those two pieces go together? It's something that you wanted to get into. You had to have some idea what you were chasing, what you wanted to get into, right? I
did, yeah. It's every race car driver wants to race professionally and kind of live that whole dream. But I also, I love the history of the sport and promoting the sport and writing about it just as much. And I'm not just a super modified guy. If there's a race, whether it's dirt racing, pavement, or whatever, I'm going to go to it if I can. So just race chasing and just developing that love for the sport over the last few years, learning about all the dirt track stuff. It's just things that come full circle. So
awesome. We've got Stephen Evans is now able to join us. Skype giving him some fits this evening. How are you, Stephen?
Oh, I'd be a lot better if Skype was working for me tonight, but we'll take what we can get, right?
I realized when I was looking back through the thread of messages that I hadn't told you about the 6 o'clock start time either. I apologize.
Hey, man, we're good. We're taking a top 5 car, and we're going to pull a top 10 out of it.
Well, we're talking a little bit with Camden Proud about basically just starting off some of his writing career and getting involved on the PR side of things, and it was a dream goal of his to get behind the pen, as it were, at Oswego Speedway, in addition to being behind the wheel, and it's something that you can kind of relate to as well. You've taken a little bit of the same path.
Absolutely, and I think that both myself and Camden kind of came into this whole deal at a really interesting time, because the path to, getting to where both of us are, and Chris, I know you and I have talked about this several times, the path to getting into, a position of, writing about the sport, or serving as public relations director, or even announcing, is, I think it's a way different now than it was when Chris was coming into the sport, because at the time that Chris came into the sport, there was always somebody that kind of took you under their wing and was kind of a mentor of sorts. And I think sometimes now, we still have our mentors for sure, but I think it's not, I think the path is much different, and I won't say that it's easier, but what I would say is that I think with the improvements in technology and things, the way that you come about your business now is way different than what it used to be.
I think there's a couple different pieces there that I would be inclined to agree with. One, if you want to write in motorsports right now, all you need to do is start writing. It's not exactly the same as where you sort of had to find and carve out your niche and find the opening at a particular track so that you're not stepping on this writer's toes or that writer's toes. If you're looking to get into one of the trade magazines, if you've got a .com or even if you've got a Facebook page, you can start your own blog and you can write about basically whatever you want to. And then also it's there's come to, at least on the dirt side of the things, where Dirt Track Digest is a major player in the landscape, whereas back when I first started coming in, Dirt Track Digest was sort of on the fringe. It was on the very probably on the furthest reaches of the writing universe. Now it's right there at the epicenter, and you've got the opportunities to come along and write all sorts of different stuff. The days of the press release writing and the race recaps are almost obsolete, because you don't have to put that content out there as a feature writer. It's more about generating stories about the personalities and where people finished, why they finished, how they finished, things of that nature, because Twitter, social media, Facebook, and the tracks as well have gotten so good about getting their winner content and their results out there so quickly. The race report itself isn't as paramount. Camden's in a little bit of a different situation because he's taking care of a racetrack. He's got to make sure that his race reports and stuff are out there and that content reaches every place. And Oswego is one of the only places that I can think of off the top of my head that does a featured press release for each one of the divisions that's in action. And that's much different than what we see on some of the dirt side of things, but it's also only 2 or 3 different divisions on a given night versus sometimes 4, 5, 6, or 7, depending on what track you're at.
And I think that's something that makes what Camden does pretty unique. Camden, is that something that was kind of, that process was handed down to you? Is that, something that's part of the culture there at Oswego, is that they do a separate press release for each division?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Danny Kaye, when he was there, he obviously did a great job and revolutionized the public relations for Oswego, and he had always done a super modified race story and an SBS race story, and like Chris said, it'd be a lot different if we had 6, 7 classes like some of the local dirt tracks do, but I felt as though I wanted to continue that. There's only 3 divisions now. Sometimes we have 4 at the most, and I just, I want to give every class the love, not just the supers. I know it's a lot more difficult for some of the dirt tracks to do that because there are so many classes, but, I try to keep up on that every week.
How difficult is it to maintain your race car and keep track of what's happening on the racing surface itself?
Well, it's impossible, really. I mean, the only way I'm able to write the recaps is because Times Video Production gives me a courtesy code on National Vision to go back and watch it. And other than what I'm doing, I have really no idea what happens anymore. And, I've been a super modified fan my whole life, and I've run 6 features now, I think, and it's still so weird being out there and not watching. And it's been quite the adjustment.
In terms of the writing side of things at Oswego, Danny Kaye put together, to steal Stephen's term, he put together such a good culture and really set a very high bar for the writing side of things, for the exposure side of things. How much does that come back to you and the Speedway in terms of the sponsor interaction, and also some of the not so much the fan, but also the driver interaction, because you're giving sponsors and you're giving drivers an opportunity to have their own opportunity in the limelight. I mean, obviously, it would be awesome if some place like Outlaw Speedway could write a separate press release for their hobby stock and for their four-cylinders and give those guys a little bit of time in the limelight. But I think with the number of inches that are available and the amount of time that you have on the clock, I don't think that that's necessarily feasible. But you're giving the sponsors their opportunity for individualized recognition, also the drivers. I mean, obviously the fans are happy about it, but what kind of feedback do you get on that?
We've gotten some good feedback on that. This year we started doing something every day on our Facebook page. Or most days, I should say. We call it a partner profile or a sponsor spotlight type of thing, and we try to recognize one of our dozens of sponsors we have every single day. And you can never do enough for the sponsors. That's what makes the race cars go on the track. That's what allows the doors to open up in the spring. So definitely really important, the whole sponsor interaction and keeping those guys happy. We couldn't do it without them.
Is writing a... I guess it's unfair to say is writing a goal for you because you're doing it right now. Is there long-term, full-time job prospects for you down the line? Are you going to pursue additional education in that background so that you can go and advance your career in writing?
I'm not sure, honestly. I hope so. I actually, the racing stuff isn't even really my real job. I work for a public relations firm in Oswego during the day most of the time, and then it's usually 3, 4 o'clock by the time I get to start my racing press releases. So just like you said, time is such a big thing, and there's way more I'd like to do with Oswego or with ISMA, and I wish that I was employed there full-time or full-time to some degree, at least like Danny Kay was, but that's not the case. So definitely a full-time writing, PR, some sort of position like that in motorsports would kind of be my ultimate goal.
Right. Stephen, it seems so much like, especially in my experience with it, is if you want to be full-time in motorsports, you got to be willing to be at 3 different racetracks, juggle all that, and then find another way to sort of carve your way with some sort of part-time job during the week that's also going to let you have time off to catch the midweek stuff, just because there just wasn't the same full-time opportunities back, 15 years ago now, 10, 15 years ago, as what there might be now. I mean, so many of the tracks have a full-time social media press representative versus what it was back in the mid-2000s or earlier.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. And, I think that it's a lot tougher. I mean, there's so few full-time opportunities to kind of do that thing where you really have to have something that you can fall back on to pay the light bill. I mean, even a few years ago when I remember working Outlaw and Woodhall both for one season, I mean, that's a lot of work to begin with, just doing one track, much less doing two, and doing them in back-to-back nights in one weekend. But in order to do that and keep up with everything that you really want to keep up with to really do everybody justice and do a good job, and still carry full-time employment, man, it's tough. It is tough. Like I said, I only did that just one season and, learned quick that was maybe not the best plan. So it's definitely, but I still feel that now, kind of stepping more into the announcing role and stepping away from some of the PR stuff is I see more this year just how much time I was spending, in previous years, doing that stuff just to keep up with one racetrack, much less trying to do two in order. And when you're doing volume that way, you're trying to, make a little bit of a career out of it, or if not a career, a really solid part-time gig. But man, that is tough for sure. I mean, even if you're just writing, if you're writing for a publication, some of those things are few and far between nowadays. You see like things like, I know our friend Doug was writing for the Syracuse Post-Standard, and to get a feature story like that in a large paper for motorsports is tough to come by. That kind of went away this year. So, I mean, it's tough to even, get that enough to make it worth foregoing what you might have full time elsewhere.
Cam, the local paper up there in Oswego has been pretty supportive of the track, haven't they? It seemed like they do a pretty good job of either covering directly themselves or at least reusing the press content that you guys distribute.
Yeah, they really are awesome about it. They always have been. We get in quite a few feature stories, little race preview, race recap, whether it be their own or something I put together, and they send in at least a couple members of their staff into the pits every Saturday night to do some coverage. So we're lucky to have the Pal Times, still pretty heavily involved in covering what's going on here at Oswego.
Maybe they'll hire you and you can start doing like school board meetings and stuff too.
I don't know about that.
How about your season as a whole? How's that coming around? I know we talked a little bit about what you're doing in terms of the press release stuff, but you've still got a racing career that you're tending to as well.
Yeah, it's just been an unbelievable experience, really, from top to bottom. Just the learning curve of the super modified classes. It's just ridiculous, quite honestly. The first 2 weeks we were really rude awakening, and finally last week we tested at the end of the week and got it running a lot better. We were mid to high 16-second laps, and that's, we're getting there. It's just the learning curve, and even just this new package they have with the rear lane and balancing out your rear lane with your front lane, and just kind of figuring what all that stuff does. It's so much different than the small block class, and it's really humbling to be out there every week and just learn and take those baby steps.
Tell me a little bit about this new package that's out there for the super modifieds. It's a, I don't know if we want to call it a transitional year, but there's certainly some new pieces to this package in terms of the spoiler combinations that are on these cars at Oswego. And there was a lot of discussion that went into getting to the point where we're at right now with this new combination.
Right. It's definitely a lot different. The super modified over the years has been all about change and evolution. It started out with like a mod class, and then we had the rear engine cars and the roadsters when the offset came around, and then we had the shovel tails, and then the L comes out, and now we've taken away the big tail section and the so-called tail lane, and now we have a raised single element rear lane on the back of the car that sits just above the roll cage. And basically the goal behind that was to entice some of the ISMA or MSS guys, the wing guys, to come to Oswego, take the top lane off, and put this small lane on, and it's working so far. We have a lot of ISMA guys that are very competitive now at Oswego that really otherwise weren't, and same with a couple of MSS teams. So, the car counts are heading in the right direction, and it's doing what it was designed to do. I think as the teams figure out this package a little bit more and play around, the racing will get a lot better too.
So was the goal of this to generate more parity, or was it to generate more interest from the drivers that ran exclusively with ISMA?
I think a little bit of both, but definitely to kind of pull those teams from ISMA and get them to come out to Oswego, because ISMA's only having 10 races. Granted, we're having the same amount of races, but it's on different weeks, and those weeks that ISMA's not racing, those are 15, 20 super modified sometimes. They're just sitting around, but with this wing to now be competitive at Oswego, there's cars that are running 17.1 and 17.2. They're running 16.2 this year just because of this wing. So it's eliminated the high-dollar tail section and all the crazy aero stuff through Hawk or whoever it might be, and it just allows everybody to play around. It's really all in the driver and the crew chief's hands, and it's an experiment again, so it's exciting to watch.
It has been interesting to track with the changes that have been made, but the more things change, Stephen, it also seems like the more things stay the same. You talk about how these changes and it puts it back in the driver's hands because everybody's starting with a new notebook and stuff, and we're seeing a lot of the same names that have been successful in those super modifieds finishing up front, and some of those other names, most recently Otto Sidderly, when he made that huge charge this weekend, marching up into the podium positions. They're able to drive up through, and those guys that really know how to drive a super modified, it doesn't seem like what combination you give them, they can still be successful.
Well, I've seen a lot of people say this already, and I think it's I think Camden would agree with this. regardless of what package there is, and this goes for Oswego, dirt, NASCAR, whatever, the fast guys are going to be fast guys. I mean, there's no beating good, solid race cars and even better preparation. And I think Otto Sitterly fits that, and his team fits that to a T. I mean, they're going to be fast regardless what you throw at them. They may not be the dominant car week in and week out. And I mean, Camden, maybe you can shed some light on this. I'm not sure that this package necessarily is going to take, somebody who's dominant and they're not going to win races, and guys that don't win races are all of a sudden going to win races. But I think the playing field now is such that guys, there's going to be a lot more parity. You're still going to be, guys like Otto Sitterly are still going to be fast. Excuse me. But at the same time, you're going to have, I think, an even better product on the racetrack. And on top of all this, you also have the compound that gets put down on the racetrack. So you've got that also with the package. And I think for some really exciting racing, and we've seen winners in Victory Lane that, they may have made their way to Victory Lane, but we're seeing it a little sooner.
Oh, yeah, you're definitely right about that. It's, like you said, the cream is always going to rise to the top regardless. But I do think that it kind of brings this to a little bit more of a level playing field. I don't think that guys that are, kind of middle of the pack, back of the pack guys are just going to show up and win. But it definitely, what it's doing is the ISMA cars or the 20-15-year-old cars from the mid-'90s, early 2000s, there's a car that was built in 95 that was out there 2 weeks ago running 16.6 and like 0.4 of a second off the fast qualifying lap. So I think what it's doing is kind of bringing some of those older cars back to life and at least making guys that were otherwise pulling in the pits halfway through the race or way in the back of the pack feel as though they can be a lot more competitive. It's started to do that, and the traction compound is another piece. They're really just shooting for more competitive racing, and right now we've had 5 different winners in 5 races, so we'll just see how it all shakes out. I think it's anyone's game. Real
quick, whatever you just did with your phone, leave it right there, because I could hear you great right there. Don't change the thing. It sounds great right there. And I should have looked this up, just the way the conversation went. Who won? There was a car that was in Victory Lane that was 7 or 8 years old here just recently, wasn't there?
Yeah, that was Jeff Abel's car. They finished that, man, at the end of 2010. I think it saw the track for the first time in 11. But yeah, it's an older straight axle car, and he kicked everybody's butt with it. So it's like I said, doing what it's supposed to do.
How much of this is still you being just a race fan as a whole and being a fan of Oswego Speedway and super modifieds and your appreciation for what it took to get a 7-year car back to a point where it's going to be competitive and it can get to Victory Lane and that fan inside of you takes over and you're just thrilled to be able to put all that passion into a story?
Absolutely. I mean, there's nothing I'm more passionate about than Oswego and the history of it, and I'm just really pleased. I was the first person to be very skeptical when they said we're going to put a raised wing on the back of the car. I didn't like how it looked. I didn't like anything about it, and right now I can so far say that Johnny Tracy was right. He had the right idea, and it's working out well so far. But those stories are cool. You're getting different names involved and just different drivers that I've seen race elsewhere in Ohio or wherever else with ISMA that are now coming here, and to see them be competitive at Oswego, cars and names that haven't even thought of coming up here in 20 years, it's been really cool so far.
Has it been tough, Camden, though? I know when that first got announced and when they were doing some of the testing there with the Bellinger car, I mean, there was a period of time there where seemed like this was going to be a really tough sell to the fans and the racers, but it seems like you guys just kind of endured that process and kind of stuck with the plan, knowing that what you've seen now this year is exactly what they were aiming for. I mean, that's got to be pretty rewarding for the track staff.
It is rewarding. It feels good so far. I know there was a lot of very skeptical people. People don't like change. Everybody, I hate the wing. It's ugly. It's hideous. The racing's going to suck. And I don't think that's the case. It's not my most favorite thing in the world, but it's going to help the class. You're going to get more cars. You're going to get older cars that are faster, and you can't let a wing ruin your Saturday nights and ruin the super modifieds for you. So, it is rewarding, and I think to some extent the track management can almost say, I told you so type of thing. It's definitely, the design is working out in our favor so far anyway.
Has the realization come around now to where the racing product, as Stephen was saying a bit ago, with the wing combination and with the increased competition and things along those lines, has the racing on track also gotten better? Are you seeing the cars running from 10th on back, showing the ability to make passes, getting a little bit more action longer into the features? It's one thing to have a new combination where it lets guys that have been really good to move through the pack and get people to come back to the track, but it's another thing altogether to make the product be entertaining, so that in addition to have somebody that's making ground and charging their way up into the top 5, you also got guys that are racing side by side as they gain experience in 12th, 15th, 18th, 20th place.
Yeah, most definitely. I totally agree. And right now, I'm not going to lie, that's my biggest concern with the new package at this time, because there are some guys that are coming from 15th and finishing 4th, or 12th and winning Otto. There's Otto and Gozek. Those guys, those veterans, have really figured it out, and I think it's just a matter of some of these other guys figuring it out that haven't completely gotten it down yet. It's really tightened the cars up, and it's made passing for now a little bit more difficult. There's not no passing by any stretch. It's just, I'm not going to say the racing's better. I think it's just a matter of how long is it going to take before the next guy and the next guy and the next guy hits on what they need to with this aero package and finds the right balance, and then there'll be more side-by-side racing.
How did this change at Oswego align with what ISMA wants in terms of their cars, their rules, and their presentation of a division?
Well, Oswego and ISMA have always been two completely separate entities, obviously, and
right.
It's completely different car, even more so now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not even more so now. It's just the whole wing thing. That's the big difference. They have the big top wing and the big shocks and all that stuff on the top lanes, and they got $50,000 motors that they're running 4 races on and taking those out and putting another motor in. So I think it's a lot more expensive to go ISMA racing right now, and I think that's the advantage Oswego might have, is that we're enticing people to come out and spend a little bit less money than they otherwise would with ISMA, but at the same time, you don't want to hurt ISMA either. So
right.
It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
I can't believe the money that they invest in those ISMA motors unto itself. That's a conversation we'll get to here. Maybe we'll branch into that a little bit in a few minutes as we get into some of the conversation about Camden Proud working with ISMA as well as racing at Oswego and handling the public relation duties. But when I was at Gator, it was my first experience with ISMA and Gator Racing News, the print version. It was my first experience with ISMA, and in some cases even my first experience with the Oswego Speedway. And the comparison between the two was ultimately oversimplified, where, well, it's just the Oswego cars with a top wing bolted on, but there's more nuance between those two cars than what might immediately meet the eye. And especially now, as you were saying, with the different wing packages, that's not going to affect the ability, however, to cross over, right? Everybody's still going to be able to compete back and forth, especially now with Oswego and ISMA entering into this 5-race no-compete clause to help bolster attendance on the road and at the home track of Oswego.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this whole reciprocal agreement we're doing really opens the door, and it goes back to Oswego and ISMA not running against each other as much as they used to. Mm-hmm. And, sponsors, Corpac, and those guys coming through to post, $1,000 to start on the ISMA tour is really good, $750 to start at Oswego. That kind of stuff helps, along with, the events are no longer conflicting. So, with the reciprocal agreement and the contract we have with scheduling and also this Wayne, it really does give ISMA guys an opportunity that have said for the past however many years, hey, I want to come try Oswego. You can definitely come try Oswego now, and you're going to walk away. Our twin races, there's guys walking out with $1,500 just to start, and
right.
And that's, it hasn't really been something that we've seen at all in super modified racing until this year. So good step.
And you've got the opportunity this year to travel some with ISMA. Not necessarily yet. You just got the Monadnock race that's coming up here in the end of the month, right?
Yeah, Monadnock coming up next weekend in New Hampshire, and Oswego is also off that weekend, so I'm hoping we'll get a couple of Oswego cars that take advantage of the reciprocal agreement we have going on. But it stinks. ISMA's first race got rained out up at Delaware, and they were expecting a pretty decent field. Anytime you go to Canada, we have 3 races there up there this year, and that's always fun. It's really good for the class, and I just don't want to see him lose any more shows. That's a short schedule, so hopefully good weather next weekend.
Well, I think everybody's tired of losing shows. Steven, would you go out on a limb and agree with that?
Yeah, I'll go along with that, my friend. It has been rough. I mean, I won't say, anytime you say a season's been rough, you always compare to how things have gone up for the guys at Utica Rome, but my goodness, this season has just been brutal. I mean, even on nights where you get half a pro. I mean, how many times, Chris, have we seen this year where a track has gotten half the program in and then it rains? I mean,
more than recent memory. Fulton's had it happen a couple times. I think Oswego got affected by it just this weekend as well with those big rains that came through and knocked everything out at Fulton and Land of Legends. The small block super feature got rained out just past halfway, right, Cam?
Yeah, it did, unfortunately.
Yes, I mean, rain has been a factor. Utica Rome Speedway at this point, after trying to start mid-April, has 1 race in the books, which is just unbelievable. Billy Dunn's leading the points because he won the only race there.
It's terrible. I feel so bad for Bill and Kim.
Do you do a lot of racing otherwise? Or excuse me, let me rephrase that. Do you follow a lot of racing off of the pavement on the dirt side of things as well?
Big time, yeah, as much as I possibly can. I love the dirt racing. I really didn't watch any other racing growing up other than supers, and I think it was the last Super Dirt Week at the Mile I went to, and I got hooked, and any dirt race around here that doesn't conflict with Oswego, I'm probably at it.
This would be a good time to plug CNY Motorsports if you want.
Yeah, it's I don't take it too seriously. It's nice. I enjoy going out and meeting some of these dirt guys and doing the interviews and providing the coverage, and it's expanded pretty well for me. I'm happy with how it's turned out over the years, but I don't have the time. I don't have the staff. I have a few great people to help me out, but it's just more so an enjoyment kind of thing and just sort of another platform I'm trying to use to hopefully open up some doors down the road.
Well, it certainly puts into perspective some of the stuff that Mike Mallett and GT and George and all the guys over at Dirt Track Digest have been able to build. Trying to tackle it on your own and build that thing from the ground up. It's quite the undertaking to get there.
It sure is, and like I said, learning from guys like Mike, having him as a teacher, and also Danny Kay when I interned at Oswego a little bit before I worked there, and learning from Mike and Danny, I would say honestly are the 2 most instrumental people in, getting me to the point I am today with my writing and PR. I've learned a lot from those guys. So.
And when you say having Mike Mallett as a teacher, that's literally as a teacher at the high school, right?
Yeah, he was for 2 years.
So it seems longer than it was supposed to, but we won't get into that.
Those 2 different courses. I promise.
So, I didn't even think about this. Are you going to bring a car up to the opening ISMA race and race as well as do the writing, or are you just focusing on the writing side?
Oh, I'm just going to focus on the writing side. It's like I said, Oswego has been such an undertaking. We spent $3,000 on parts the last 3 weeks that we didn't think we were going to have to spend. So it's right now, we don't have a Wayne or the extra cash to get a Wayne. If anybody wants to give me one, I'd love to go, but
right.
until then, I'll just be writing.
We touched a little bit on the differences between the two rule sets, and is there a lot of additional expense that has to be invested in the car in order to get a Oswego Super Modified ready to compete with the ISMA cars beyond the obvious wing combination?
No, not really. Just changing some bars and some shocks and suspension stuff. But the wing on both sides is really the big undertaking. It used to be, like I was saying, a $1,500 tail section anytime you want to come to Oswego, and now it's, $700 in sheet metal and a wing, so they've cut the cost in half. But ISMA, by the time you're done buying the top wing itself and all the shocks and everything else for it, you're going to spend several grand, and that's something I wish that they could change, maybe cut the cost with that a little bit. But, there's a lot of different things that we like to cut the cost with on super modified racing, but how does it happen? Everybody seems to have all the answers, but it's a work in progress.
If fuel, engines, and tires were cheaper, it wouldn't matter about how much their wing costs, right?
Exactly, yeah.
What do you got planned for this weekend itself? Besides Oswego, are you going to be catching up with any of the racing at Brewerton? Or are you going to be looking next week maybe getting to the big show, 11 at Albany, Saratoga?
Yeah, I was just thinking there's so much racing going on. The next 2 weeks is probably going to be the busiest couple of weeks of the summer with all the stuff going on next week. The big show at Malta on Tuesday, and then they have the 358 series shows at Can-Am at Fulton Wednesday and Thursday. Mm-hmm. And then the following week, it's just about Independence Day and all the Speed Week stuff kicks in. So, yeah, just tons going on. Went to Outlaw last night, probably Brewerton tomorrow, and race Saturday and go up to the Colt Cup at Utica Rome on Sunday. It finally looks like good weather for those guys. So
finally.
I love the new format.
Finally. It's a rare day when they get sun shining in Verona, I guess.
Yeah, so.
It's been certainly has been tough. We've documented that pretty well. Steven,
well, we know the new thing at Utica this year is Chris being there. So we can blame it on Chris, right?
You want to know something funny is when I got up there a couple weeks ago, and they had just wrote the press release and said, hey, it's rained out for this weekend on, I think it was June 2nd. When we got that note, I told Mike at this point the only race that's gotten in was when I was in Ohio. So if you want me to quit on the spot just so you can race next weekend, just let me know. If you want me to stay home, if you want me to go out of town, whatever, just let me know. That way you can get some races in. And He said he wasn't for sure if that was actually the problem. It might have been more with weather than it was me.
Yeah, for sure, man. But yeah, like you guys were saying, so far, knock on wood, things look pretty good for this weekend.
Yeah, knock on wood. Big knock on wood for sure.
You had the chance to get into a dirt car before?
Oh, no, I haven't. Last year I've gotten pretty close with Carol and Alton Palmer, and they're great people, and they were going to just let me go out and hot lap the 76 at Utica Rome, and of course, practice rained out that day, so it never really happened, but they said there might be an opportunity for me down the road to give it a try, and I would love to.
That would be cool. That would be neat to see. In terms of your racing career and the direction that's going, is Oswego the first and final chapter of where this is going with the super modifieds? Do you want to get into something different, try something different, try and expand horizons? Do you ultimately want to go down south? Where do you want to go with that side of things?
I'm not sure. It's, I grew up racing quarter midgets and watching my father and uncle race at Oswego, and Oswego and a super modified and fielding a super modified weekly has kind of always been my ultimate goal. If you ask me, would you rather run the Daytona 500 or the International Classic, I'd pick the Classic hands down. So just to get to do this right now, it has been a dream come true, and we'll see what happens the rest of the year and what kind of results it brings. But, we had 5 good years in the small blocks, West finishing second 7 times and not winning. So I would like to win at Oswego more than anything else.
Right. Did you go do the small block supers race that was held at Spencer Speedway in Williamson?
Nope, I was there, but I didn't race, and my dad was supposed to race my car, but he broke his hand, so we couldn't bring the car.
Jeez, that's some bad luck right there.
Yeah, it was.
On the plus side, that race didn't rain out.
No, it didn't rain out, believe it or not.
How do you sustain the super modified class? I mean, obviously these rule changes have been extremely beneficial in terms of giving the guys that have these cars places to run, and it's breathed some new life into cars that are old, that are aged a little bit. But no matter what type of racing you're talking about, you dial the clock way back into the 70s and the 80s. There was a car at every mom and pop gas station, every repair shop, every homespun garage operation had a race car of some sort. It was a drag racing car, it was a dirt car, it was an asphalt car. Now you're talking about maintenance every 4 races on an engine that costs $50,000, and the sponsor money, not to mention the hometown style support, it's just not there for any racing program, regardless of what you're looking at. You know, the two that we always come back to in terms of affordability and return is you can run a really, really good sportsman operation, and for about the same amount of money that you can run a really, really good 360 operation. After that, everything just sort of falls off the backside because of the amount of cost. How does the super modified stay viable and continue to generate new drivers and keep the cars on the tracks? Because to me, hearing about only having 2 real opportunities to either one to race weekly and the other to race on a touring series seems like a gigantic investment in terms of the $50,000, plus you can only use some of the equipment half the time.
Exactly. It's a huge initial investment. And I don't want to say that every motor is $50,000. It's just some of those high-end teams on ISMA specifically are going through 3 or 4 motors a year, and sometimes they're just crushing them after a race or two, which it's just crazy. I mean, I can't even imagine. But for the entry-level guy to get involved in the super modified class, like we're a very entry-level, low-budget team, it's so difficult. It's not like anything even close to what it was in the 70s and 80s when you got guys dragging old frames out of the woodwork. Everything's home built. You got to get your high-dollar parts and wings and aero from Joey Hawksby or whoever else to be competitive nowadays. So there's so many supers out there. I just don't think people have the money to be competitive right now, and we just have to keep taking these little steps to cut the cost.
I'm trying to remember what the years were, but that original offset car raced well into the 80s, if not the early 90s, didn't it? The original Champagne offset car? Yeah,
I think the last race, I'm guessing maybe 92. Jamie Moore raced it in the early 90s. So, I mean, I think it could still be fast today, honestly.
Well, I mean, that's not exactly where I was going with it, but that brings up an interesting point about you're talking about stuff that was built in the 90s still being competitive. That's great. Is it still also safe?
I don't know. It's hard to say. It's really hard to say. Yes, I think so with the modern technology you're putting in the cars. And you know, there's cars that have come out from the 90s the past couple of years with just really below the roll cages. The only thing that remains, they've done a new cage and a new front end and new rear clip and all that stuff. So sure. I don't think there's anybody that would bring a car to Oswego that's not safe. I hope anyway.
Well, I mean, Steven, you can remember the conversation with some of those vintage clubs that were around that wanted to keep all their stuff period correct, but they wanted to start putting modern day bigger displacement engines in them, and it just started sounding like you were just strapping a big block onto what was soon to be your coffin.
Yeah, it certainly gets you to thinking about some of that stuff because, you know, the true vintage racer, you know, really wants to take that the full 9 and keep everything as it was in the time period, but at the same time, you know, you can't strap a big block between the frame rails and expect that you're going to have as good an outcome as if you were rolling a 2018 Bicknell down the front straightaway. So right. It's got to there's got to be a balance there for sure.
And obviously, we're not doing an effective job of comparing apples to apples because Oswego Speedway Super Modifieds, coming out of the woodwork and coming back to prominence and with an old car or something along those lines is not in any way a vintage class. It's a modern day class that's being outfitted with all the modern stuff. I'm just thinking along the lines of age in the welds and stuff like that, and a good race team is going to go through all that stuff anyway. But Stephen, a question that you might be able to field here. When we're listening to what Camden talked about all the stuff from the 60s and 70s staying relevant for so long, but now you've got to get this from a certain guy, and you got to get this from a certain guy, and you got to get this from a certain guy, it starts to sound an awful lot like a story that we've heard before, where the focused, specialized part production, however necessary for the life of the division, has been both a blessing and a curse, because now it's added increased cost and specialization to the division.
Well, that's certainly a consideration, isn't it? And it sounds something awfully familiar that we're familiar with too. And any time that you want to get that extra edge, and maybe that's something Camden can answer for us, is, as far as trying to get, if everybody is going to, kind of the same circle of folks, whether it's, a car or parts and pieces, is there really any way for guys to really get any kind of edge in that department? Because it seems like the core circle of manufacturers for the super modifieds, it wouldn't lead you to a lot of opportunity to get that edge on your competition, because a lot of the guys are going to be kind of on the same stuff. Or is there some of that specialization out there?
I think you're right. It's just the Hawk cars, the Hawk chassis, have gone into mass production. They've just taken over, and everybody has one, but not everybody has the independent front end, and that's the new thing that they allowed back to the track just a few short seasons ago, and it's kind of changed the shape of super modified racing as we see it right now, because the cars run so much different in traffic, and you're talking another several $1,000 hit just to put the independent on. So there's Hawk cars, there's straight axle, and there's Hawk cars that are independent, and these independent cars seem to have the advantage right now.
And the Abold boys showed that you don't have to have that independent front end to get the job done either. So, nope. That's one thing that's been pretty cool to see out of that.
It has been, and Abolds are no slouch by any stretch. Pat's one of the great mechanics and super modified engineers that the Speedway has seen, in its history. So those guys were competitive without this wing change that we made over the off season, but it definitely does allow some. The problem is it's allowing the 20-year-old cars or the 10-year-old cars or whatever they may be to pick up 4/10, but it's also the newer Hawk cars, whether they're independent or straight axle or whatever they are. Everybody's picked up 4/10, so it just goes back to the whole: the good drivers are going to be the good drivers, and the good mechanics are going to be the good mechanics. And right now, I think Otto's probably the smartest guy in the pits, and that's why he's the first person to really have this whole package figured out, because he does it all. So it's Otto's world right now, and we're kind of all just living in it until everybody else hits on it.
The term that comes to mind from way back in the dirt modified days was cubic dollars. It's all the same equipment, and the way to get the leg up on somebody else is cubic dollars.
Yeah, for sure, and I think that's kind of where you see there are some different, differences in what guys are running, because for a lot of guys, of course, some of this rear end stuff that we're seeing in the dirt stuff now gives guys a lot more options as far as how they're setting these cars up and such. So I could see that both on the super modified side and on the dirt side for sure. Camden, what is now that you're a part of that super modified division, do you feel that you see now even more what is making Otto Siddeley so good? I mean, or do you think that everybody can kind of see it and being on the racetrack doesn't make that much of a difference, or do you feel like you have an even better understanding, or maybe I should say better appreciation for what it is that he's been able to do in this decade?
Definitely a better appreciation, I think, would be the phrase I'd go with. It's, Otto's one of my childhood heroes, along with Doug Didero and Joe Gozick and all those guys, and just to be in the car and just to step on the gas and run, I don't want to say competitively yet, but at least up to speed with some of these guys. It's, man, what an appreciation I've gained for all of these super modified drivers, whether it's Otto or anybody that's raced at Oswego over the years. It's a tough game, but Otto's one of the best drivers, no doubt, of all time at Oswego Speedway, and now to be involved in the class directly and slowly start to learn these cars and what they do and how they work. His understanding, he's just a warehouse of knowledge. It's unbelievable what he's capable of as far as tuning up a race car, let alone his driving skills on the track. So he's just the whole package.
I get to make my first trek up to Oswego without the dirt laid on the surface this Saturday. I got to go up there and work with Matt Thomas and learn a little bit of their production stuff. So, Cam,
cool.
I'm getting up there. Maybe I can catch up with you because I don't think I haven't seen you since we got back from Middletown.
No, that was a fun day. I can't believe that was 2-3 months ago now, almost.
I know, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's awesome. You'll have to stop out and say hi.
It was 7 trillion gallons of water ago.
Yeah, no kidding. That's a better way to describe it.
Online, if you want to learn more about Oswego Speedway, OswegoSpeedway.com, ISMA. If you jump on Camden's Facebook page, if you look at all the job titles that he has, those links to all that stuff as well. You can find him out there. ISMAsupers.com is the website if you want to go directly to their website. There's absolutely tons of information out there in terms of the schedules, both locations. And then if you want to follow along with what Camden's up to, of course, jump right on his Facebook page as well, Camden Proud on Facebook, juggling all of that stuff.
They even started a podcast this year for the Super Modifieds.
They sure did. You beat me to it. Yes, so I guess take it from there. Yes, you beat me to it.
Camden, that's something that's new this year, and I've been watching the reaction from the fans up that way, and it seems like not just the fans, but some of the local sponsors up in that direction are really getting behind that effort here early on, which is really cool to see.
It's been super cool. Tom Baker, great job with the radio stuff. He's been involved with the Supers, as long as anyone. He asked me to do this back in January, February, and I was all on board. Just another avenue to promote the Super Modifieds that we otherwise really weren't doing. And we've had all kinds of guests on there, whether it be current drivers, past drivers, car owners. We had Mike Silverman, our tire guy, on there, and I think it's a great way for the fans to just have another place to go and get some insight on what's going on in super modified racing, and not just at Oswego, but ISMA, MSS, Colorado, California. We're trying to cover it all, and just been really, really pleased with the feedback we've gotten so far.
Chris, I know we're coming up on our time here, but I wanted to get one question to Cam about this. With that podcast and with some of this really targeted content for the racetrack, how important is that stuff right now? Because, it seemed like years ago, if you had a great race report on the website and got your information out to all the publications and all the media outlets and things, that was how racetracks really did a good job promoting their racetrack. But now there's so many different things and so many different avenues. But it seems like right now that online media content is really, you can't put a price on stuff like that. Anything to get the fans to be able to have something to chew on during the week.
No, you definitely can't put a price on it. And I'm learning about new avenues and social media platforms every single day. It's just time is the biggest thing, and resources and having the help. But it's a learning experience every day working for the track, not just racing at the track. And it's so important now. That's how everybody gets their news and their information is Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of that stuff. And, I think at Oswego we've done a pretty good job keeping up with the digital age and just kind of modeling and learning from some of what the other premier tracks and series across the country do. And that's just as humbling as driving, as doing the PR stuff. It's quite the undertaking.
Gives you the opportunity to interview people like Otto Sitterly.
What's that?
Gives you the opportunity to interview people like Otto Sitterly, who, after you watch his tail tank for 50 laps at Oswego, you get to go interview him about it.
Yeah, it's weird. It's so funny. I don't even get to interview anybody, like I said, until I watch the replay. But still, when I first started doing the job before I was racing the Supers, just to get to put those stories together with guys like Joe Gozick or Doug or Otto, and have them talk about their IndyCar days and all the big races and just the history too, and some of the stuff that happened that were my favorite moments as a kid watching the Supers. It's neat. I don't think my love and passion for the Supers will ever die.
That's good, and hopefully they're around for a long time so everybody can enjoy it. It's such a unique race car. I mean, one of a kind.
They sure are, and I hope that we continue to take the right steps here moving forward. Like I said, cut the costs, get the younger generation of fans involved, and keep bringing more cars out of the woodwork. And I think it's all headed in the right direction.
I think, Steven, if anybody watching at home wanted to, they could turn this episode into a drinking game, and they got to take a sip every time we say the word woodwork.
Hey, whatever works for you, man. I mean, I think the question would be is, what is the drink of choice tonight?
I'll text you later.
Sounds good.
Anything else that you wanted to hit on? Any place else that we can direct people to go to find more information about Oswego Speedway, Camden Proud, where to find what you're writing about, what you're talking about, or the ISMA series, in addition to the websites and the social media pages?
No, that's just about it. Just OswegoSpeedway.com and ISMASupers.com. Both are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Snapchat. And as far as any stuff I'm covering, just you can find me on Facebook and click on any of my job titles. Like you said, there's a lot of them. I seem to be getting a new one every other day right now. So
the list is up to 34 and counting. Camden, man, I appreciate you coming on and hanging out with us for a little while on this one, episode number 255. Always good to talk to you, and God willing, I'll catch up with you Saturday.
Yeah, I look forward to talking to you on Saturday, and great chatting with you guys tonight. And thanks again for having me on. It was a good time.
Always, man. Open door. Anytime you got anything going on, let me know.
All right, sounds good. Thanks again.
We'll talk to you soon, Cam.
All right, talk to you later.
There's some thoughts from one Camden Proud. Young man carving a niche out for himself, the media director, public relations director, social media director for Oswego Speedway, and also the social media director for the ISMA series. So, in addition to wheeling the race car, and he does all that on the side, along with the podcast, along with CNY Motorsports, in addition to his full-time job. So he's going to stay young forever if he keeps up this pace.
Yeah, I honestly, Chris, I envy his energy.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like at one point I had maybe half of that energy in doing different, race activities and media ventures and whatnot. But man, I don't know. At 33, I'm starting to slow down.
I can relate to doing that. I remember a couple of years that I went over 100 races, and I was gone Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I was working a full-time job, but now I look at what he's doing and think, good for you, buddy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a lot. But I tell you what, he's doing a great job with it.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the other thing, though, is, even though I know it takes up a lot of time and energy, he doesn't put anything out that's, half-assed. It's always, done to the nine. He always does great interviews. I mean, and I think that's something that he's really picked up with some of the people that he's worked with along the way is getting that good interview and asking the right questions and, really giving his readers and, something to really kind of sit and process and think about, not just the softball questions. So.
Right. He's willing to go to some of the tougher places, which is always good. And he's, I know it's going to sound hokey to some of the folks who aren't necessarily of the writer mindset, but he's willing to be a student of the game. I mean, from the writing side of things, if you want to become a better writer, read a lot of stuff that people have written. And you start figuring out how the flow is supposed to go, and you can see how the stuff is woven together so that it tells a story front to back, and you learn how to put the important stuff. So if you do lose people, at least they get the important parts of the content. That's so important, knowing how to put that together when you're doing the pre-race releases, because those generally can do their job in the first couple of paragraphs, and if somebody tunes out, at least they still have the details, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And, sometimes you even get lucky enough when the same sponsor comes back on the same night next year.
Right? Open it up, save as a copy, new dates.
Yeah, I'd never
once. You're gonna get some racing in at Land of Legends this weekend. It looks like Patriots are in town, right?
Well, yeah. So we've got a really, really awesome show this weekend. We've got the Patriot Sprint Tours in town and double big block features. Finally, we're gonna get that makeup big block feature in. So it's really. It's going to be a pretty good ticket this weekend. General admission this weekend's $20, and you get 2 big block features and a sprint car feature. And somehow I've still seen people complaining about it on Dirt Track Digest. I don't understand, how you could complain for a $20 ticket to see what you're going to see on Saturday. So
aren't the sportsman cars running double points too?
Yeah, sportsman cars are. So we've actually. It makes me dizzy thinking about it already.
How's your week been, Steven?
Oh, it's been great, man. So the sportsman guys have got double points. You've got double big block features, the sprints. Oh, by the way, Gary Montgomery getting enshrined into the Land of Legends Raceway Wall of Fame on Saturday as well. And, on a more serious note, that part I'm very much looking for. I mean, I'm looking forward to all of it, but I'm really looking forward to that part of it and being able to participate in that. Mm-hmm. Gary was such a good friend, and, I've made a lot of good friends in racing along the way, but, to be a part of all that, just knowing how much he meant to Canandaigua and how much Canandaigua meant to him and his family is going to be really, really special. So looking forward to that. So it's, just going to be another crazy night, man. I mean, I can't believe how fast those shows go when you're working with the production team and you are, from the minute you go live at 6:45 until the show's over, just that production level, there's no downtime. There's no, hey, I'll be right back. I'm going to go grab a hot dog and go to the concession stand here during intermission. You're go right from the drop of the green flag.
You got to be part announcer, part camel.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, and that's the other thing that is different about this week too. I'm going to be announcing for the Patriots because Paul Harkenreiter is getting his wisdom teeth out tomorrow. So he's not going to be there on Saturday. So I get to add one more thing to my clipboard. But that's going to be something I've never done before. I've never announced for the sprint cars.
You've never done a Patriot race before?
Not on my own. No, it's always there's always been somebody there. Now at Outlaw and Woodhall, Paul and I have worked back and forth together doing the race call. Mm-hmm. But I've never done that kind of on my own. I've never called a sprint car 4 wide. Get to cross that off the list this weekend. Cool. So I mean, it's going to be pretty crazy, but it's going to be a lot of fun.
I got a double weekend myself going to Oswego and finally looking at 10% chance of rain at both Saturday and Sunday, and then Sunday turn around for the Coal Cup. We got that race out there at Utica.
Yeah, so that ought to be pretty special.
Should be fun. I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna be. I think it's gonna be tough to push Mike off of the microphone and keep him in his little cage so that he can be race director.
That would be I'd be really interested to talk to Mike about that. I wonder how tough of a transition that's been. I think it would be hard for me to do that.
You're going to have to let him do a race first.
Well, that's true. That's true. He's got one race in, right?
Yeah.
But I'm very curious, once he gets a couple shows in to do that, how tough that transition is. Because I think, being the person that's calling the race and trying to, make sure that people are enjoying what's going on, and then you kind of separate yourself, and now you put your race official hat. That's got to be a tough transition.
Well, I think if nothing else, he's going to be doing a really good job at being everybody's spotter, because if he starts announcing the race through the one-way radios, everybody's going to know what's going on. It's not really a bad thing.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. That's true. So,
well, I hope everything goes well for you this weekend, and the forecast doesn't change between now and Saturday night.
I hope so, man. It looks like we might just have a solid weekend here on our hands, and then starting Monday, we get 3 or 4 days straight of rain. But you know what? I'll take that if we get a good weekend.
I wasn't going to bring it up, but I looked at Monday through Wednesday next week, and I thought, man, if those winds change it any little bit, Sunday's going to get rained out again.
We won't go there.
No, hopefully not. Well, I'm glad Skype settled down for you, and you're able to hang out with us here for a little while, and everything worked good. I don't know what magic buttons you pushed or what email you sent, but we got there.
Yeah, Skype was. I've had the same Skype account for, good grief, 6 years now. I mean, all the way back to the Race Chaser days, and
right.
I don't know, for whatever reason tonight it decided that it didn't want to work and it wanted Brad's email. Well, must be Brad was the one that originally set this account up, because I can't get the password to it. I had to create a whole new account. I'm sitting here saying things I won't say on the air, trying to get this thing to work. And I'm like, man, Chris is going to think I'm the biggest schmuck in the world here, leaving him out to dry. But hey, man, it's always a good time chatting with you guys about racing. And this is just my pace, man. It's great.
For sure. I was really starting to think, wow, when I read back through the messages and I realized we were going at 6, and I never put that in the message to him. Like, wow, he's not on because he's going to be tuning in at 7 o'clock and find the show's over. But it worked out.
Yeah. I'll be in there just in time to say, hey, how was Camden?
Yeah. Right on.
Cool, man.
Great. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up here. 2:55 in the books. We appreciate Steven coming on and hanging out with us for a little. Camden Proud, giving us all that information about Oswego and the Supers. We look forward to touching base with him again as we work through the summer, find out more about what's happening with the Supers, with Oswego, and what he's doing as well. It'd be great next time we talk to him if he's talking about a win, but we don't want to put any more pressure on him than he's already feeling from himself. That is going to do it for us here at the North Park Building at Academy Square. Again, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see everybody again right back here again in 2 weeks. We'll see you then.